Hi everyone! Today we are going to cover dietary protein, specifically our recommendations or our required daily allowance and calculations of how much intake of protein is needed. On a dry mass basis, approximately 50% of our body mass comes from protein. So in the human body, proteins are a part of every cell and tissue, including our muscle. Our bodies are constantly recycling proteins on a daily basis. So the protein that we eat in our diet can be used to replace broken down proteins in order to maintain balance. Now I'd like to draw your attention to this table, which provides an approximate amount of protein in selected foods. The highest on this chart is ostrich meat, which has quite a bit of protein per ounce, so 10 grams per ounce. So here we see multiple protein sources with various amounts of protein content. The typical contenders are on this table, including meat, poultry, fish, dairy, and legumes. And for some of you, it may come as a surprise that bread and cereal and vegetables are on the chart as well, carrying quite a bit of protein. So surprisingly enough, most food sources have even a small amount of protein. Now let's look at the conventional protein intake recommendations, specifically by Health Canada, who recommends a protein intake of approximately 0.8 grams per kilogram body mass. So at this moment, I want you to pause this lecture and calculate your own protein needs based on your weight. What should be noted is that you should have a higher amount of protein intake when you're a pregnant woman and an athlete in high-intensity training, anywhere between an increase of 10 to 35% of the conventional protein intake of 0.8 grams per kilogram body mass. How much protein do we really need to meet these guidelines? As you can see in the table below, we have a cohort allotted to a recommended daily allowance. So let's start at an average sedentary adult. They should be receiving per day 0.75 to 0.8 grams per kilogram body mass per day of protein. An active adult, we see a little bit more, 0.8 to 0.9 grams per kilogram body mass per day. A growing athlete is 1.3 to 1.9 grams per kilogram body mass per day. An endurance athlete has higher protein needs, 1.6 to 2.0 grams per kilogram body mass per day. And an adult building muscle mass also has quite high, which is 1.4 to 2 grams per kilogram body mass per day. I provided a link to a PubMed article that provides all the most recent conventional guidelines for protein intake. Remember, these are ranges. They may be over or under on a given day, but you should average within the range. As well, what is defined as a growing athlete is a child or adolescent who is also training, which, that allots to a higher protein needs. There may be some error in grouping someone within these defined categories, but remember, they are guidelines. And as we age, we need to increase our protein intake. So around the age of 40 years old, we need to increase the protein in our diets to 1 gram per kilogram body mass to maintain muscle mass. As well, as I mentioned in a previous lecture, aging adults cannot absorb leucine as much, that essential amino acid. So that means our protein intake must increase in order for us to increase the absorption and increase the amount of leucine that we're getting within our diet. So people that exercise regularly also need to eat more protein than the recommended daily intake for a sedentary individual. Now let's work through an example together. How much protein does Andrew, a 155-pound adult in a high training period, need? So first of all, we need to convert his body mass into kilograms. So we divide 155 pounds by 2.2 to get 70.5 kilograms. His recommended daily allowance, or RDA, is around 1.3 to 1.9 grams per kilogram body mass per day. I lowered the lower end to 1.3 just to ensure we're within that range. So his daily need would be his body mass times the recommended daily allowance range, which is equal to 92 to 134 grams per day. This is how much Andrew should be consuming of protein in his diet to ensure he's getting the essential amino acids needed to grow, maintain, and repair his own protein. To build on the previous slide, let's now determine how much protein Drew is consuming. So we're going to use the table that was on slide 3 during this lecture to help calculate how much protein content Drew is consuming based on the diet that he wrote down in this chart. So first of all, let's look at his breakfast. So he had 1.5 cups of mini wheat cereal, 1.5 cups of 1% milk. So if we look back on the chart on slide 3, we can calculate how much protein is in each of those food sources, in the cereal and in milk. And so we see that there's 12 grams in the mini wheat cereal and 12 grams of protein in the milk he consumed at breakfast. Let's then move on to lunch. So he had some snow peas, 2 pieces of rye bread, some cheddar cheese in there, and pancetta, lunch meat. Okay, so all that together, we are able to calculate his protein intake for that lunch. And we do the same for the supper, which was a mixed vegetables, his black beans, and some mozzarella cheese. So based on the volume of food he consumes, we can calculate the grams of protein that are within that meal. So the total is 125 grams of protein. So the question becomes, is Drew consuming an appropriate amount of protein? And the answer would be then yes. Based on his daily recommended intake of 92 to 134 grams per day, he's within that window. So he is ingesting enough protein to meet his requirements of the essential amino acids per day. What else can we say about Drew's protein consumption? We can see from his diet that he recorded that there are varied sources. We have legumes, we have meat, we have dairy. We also see that he is generally healthy in his protein source choices. You can try this exercise on yourself by doing a 1-day recording of your nutrition and analyzing it. The key piece is that you need to be honest and not change what your normal habitual daily intake is. Then you can calculate how much protein you're consuming and then compare that to the recommended daily allowance for your cohort. This will provide you with an indication of whether you're getting enough protein or too much protein. So in summary, multiple food groups yield protein, from cereal to vegetables to meat and poultry to legumes. Lots of different sources of protein, and it's important to vary your protein intake to ensure you're getting all the essential amino acids. As well, ensure you determine your protein needs and ensure you are getting the essential amino acids needed through proper nutrition. A great way to do this is by calculating your own protein needs based on the recommended daily allowance for your cohort. Too little protein prevents your body from having what it needs to build, maintain, and repair our own cellular proteins. And too much protein is in excess of our RDA and will be converted to fat.